At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast? Smart move. Being financially savvy? Smart move. Another smart move? Having State Farm help you create a competitive price when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast with Rich Ferraro.
Hello and welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. We're recording on Saturday, the 27th of December, and we hope you had a good Christmas. Now, obviously, before we get going with today's match report, just want to say that, like every other Forest supporter, we share the sadness at the loss of John Robertson, and obviously that was started to commemorate that at the game today. We will be producing a podcast in the next few days where we'll be able to have a chance to have a little bit more of a considered reflection upon the players' contributions to the red shirt and winning European Cups and Leagues and League Cups and all of the rest of it. So we will talk about that very, very soon. In the meantime, Forest took on Manchester City. They played well and they came close, but not close enough as they lost 2-1. Baz, just before we get going with the rest of it, before the match, obviously they did show a lot of the usual pre-match montage, and then the players gathered for what was supposed to be a minute's applause starting on the referee's whistle. But the fans started the minute's applause long before the announcement was finished on the tannoy, and fair play to them, the Man City fans were amongst those who started it.
Yeah, and it was... you expect it, but it was also really, really nice to see, and there was a chance of Robbo throughout as well. Yeah, absolutely, and I would say as well that you commented at Mull of Kintyre at the start of that half that it felt a bit subdued, and actually I was thinking that when the teams walked out, the kind of applause and cheering, that seemed quite subdued, and I think that actually getting the minute's applause out of the way, I think kind of was cathartic for a lot of fans. Then there's Mull of Kintyre, and then actually in reality I think it probably took until about 10 minutes into the game for the Forest fans to really, really kind of unite in creating some noise. There were pockets of noise here and there, but I think there was a lot of reflection to get out of the way in the stands, first of all.
Yeah, also, as you made the point, it's a holiday game, so possibly not as many of the normal people are there. Maybe some like relatives have got tickets instead and all that sort of thing. So maybe it just felt a little bit flatter than normal.
Yeah. And of course, the best antidote to that is to have a good performance and a good game of football. For the record, Forest made one change to their starting 11, and we all know that Fulham was what you can only describe as a collective bad day at the office. There wasn't a single player who you could pick out as having a good match against Fulham, and in contrast, I would say there wasn't really a player that you could say had a bad match today.
No,
I think it's fair to say that. And obviously there's some nuances to that, which we'll come on to throughout the report. But today Forest lined up with John Victor in goal, Big Bad John, Savona, Milenkovic, Murillo and Williams across the back, as you'd expect. Anderson partnered by Dominguez in the change to Fulham game. Now, initially, when you told me the team use when we were in the car, I was going, well, that's probably because Dougie's made of biscuits. But it was a very strategic decision there, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then Hutchinson, Gibbs-White and Hudson-Odoi behind Igor Jesus. And I've read it out as a 4-2-3-1. And I mentioned about Dominguez. I think it's really important to say Forest really adapted well. You can't just take on Man City without thinking about how you're going to absorb what they have to throw at you. And Forest did that by playing what was very much a 4-5-1 with Gibbs-White as a third central midfielder alongside Anderson and Dominguez. And certainly in the early stages of the match, Dominguez was really, really sticking like glue to Foden. And then because Foden wasn't actually, his threat was nullified quite a lot, it meant that Dominguez was able to basically concentrate on the areas of danger. And I'm just going to say it out loud because he did come off after 87 minutes, but Nico Dominguez is a very, very strong contender and a very strong day for the Reds for man of the match because he was barely touched the ball, but was absolutely everywhere, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, especially in the first half, he was outstanding. It was one of those performances where if you don't know much, if you're like a casual football fan who like we were just talking about Lionel Messi, you watch Let Messi play and you can see all the amazing things he does and you're like, oh, that's incredible. Whereas if you watch football week in, week out, and you watch what Nico Dominguez was doing, that was incredible. It was all off the ball, but he was so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tactic made by Forest to try and nullify the threat from City, Sean Dyche said it several times in the lead up to the game. We can't take them on at their own game and win. They're going to be better on the ball than us. They're going to have more of the ball than us. So what did Forest do? They played with this 4-5-1, which was very, very compact in the middle of the park. And it meant that City couldn't do their usual thing of playing their way through to get, for example, Foden on the ball or Bernardo Silva to have that space to make those passes. And in the first half, they didn't have an effort to speak of, really, did they?
They had nothing on target, and they had a few shots from distance that basically just went into a wall of red shirts.
Yeah, and a lot of the plaudits that I've seen on, for example, the BBC and Sky Sports reports on their websites are talking about how Milenkovic and Murillo were immense in the first half. And they were, but it was down to that core of those three central midfielders and the wingers tucking in, which meant that the centre of the park was so crowded, it cut off a lot of their threat at source.
Yeah, they completely congested the middle of the... In fact, you even said that at one point. There was a point where Elliot Anderson managed to win the ball back and he did his Maradona run through them. And he kind of ran out of steam, but that's because not only did he have to get through the Man City players, he had to get through the Forest players as well.
Yeah. I think... It's fair to say that City had those kind of efforts. I think Haaland had a shot that was blocked by Milenkovic. Foden had an effort that was blocked by Murillo, I think. There was another effort from distance which was blocked by Williams on the edge of the box. But they were blocked. When I say blocked, it makes it sound like they were players throwing themselves at it. They could, for the most part, they were able to just stand up because of the way that everything was congested and the way that they were positioned.
Yeah, Man City couldn't get into the box, so they were just having to shoot from distance, and then they couldn't get through the crowd of red shirts.
Yeah.
However, there was, given that it was a day of remembering John Robertson, our shot on target, well, it wasn't on target, was Robertson-esque in some ways, and it came very early on.
Yeah. So it was our own mercurial left winger of the current times, and won't be the first or last time we talk about Callum Hudson-Odoi with a very mixed bag of adjectives. But on this one, it was one of those where he was actually down near the corner flag or getting towards the corner flag, cut back onto his right foot, and he played the ball across. And it was one of those that's difficult for the defenders and the goalkeeper to deal with because it was curling inwards. So Donnarumma, does he come for it? If he does, he's in trouble. if the defenders try and get a nick on it, they could deflect it into their own net. And a combination of Jesus and Gibbs-White operating almost as one. For fans of computer football from the 90s, you know, that thing where you're slamming on the shoot button and you see 2 or 3 players sliding in towards the ball at once in sensible soccer or something like that. And the curl, the whip on the ball, and the way that the ball bounced meant that Jesus couldn't get onto it, and then it wasn't quite at the right height for Gibbs-White, who was kind of caught between, do I try and volley it, do I try and header it? And yeah, just whipped just that little, it must have been inches.
Yeah. And it was one of those where, Hudson-Odoi basically put it in perfectly. It's just we couldn't quite react in time.
Yeah. Now, we've talked about chances. Let's talk about the other major issue. Certainly for anyone of a red persuasion, it'd be interesting to know what Man City fans think, because let's just say that Igor Jesus, who was the other player who, if you're going to single out players, we've talked about Dominguez, the other one has to be Jesus. He was an absolute thorn in the side, not just of Rúben Días, but of Josko Guardiola as well.
Yeah, so both their centre-halves, they just couldn't deal with him. It's that thing where he was just winning stuff that he has no right to win, and it's just because of his energy and the fact that he never gives up. And I think probably in the first half an hour, 35 minutes, I think Guardiola and Diaz could have had 6 yellow cards between them for the way they basically, all they had left was to haul him to the ground.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm going to say 6 might be an exaggeration, but what I will say is that Diaz, in the first half, he hauled down Jesus once, he hacked at Jesus the second time, and then the third time he went through Jesus and he got a yellow card. What's very important to note is that the yellow card was not for the foul, it was for the fact that Diaz complained to referee Rob Jones and got a booking for that. We'd all been saying Diaz is on very, very thin ice for about, well, pretty much since the start of the match.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to put it on the line here. My opinion is that the fact that Diaz wasn't booked for a foul and was booked for dissent basically was Rob Jones giving carte blanche to the Man City players to say, you can do what you want physically, I'm not bothered.
Yeah, and they kind of did what they wanted physically. What's the reason, the point at which the refereeing situation, again, we're talking about referees, but the reason it became a flashpoint was then Elliot Anderson, with his first slightly mistimed challenge, gets an immediate yellow card. And it's like, Jesus must have red marks all round his neck because he was getting thrown all over the place. He was getting run into and not a hint of a card. And then Elliot Anderson makes one shiny slip when he's charging into someone, and it's an immediate yellow card. And it was just infuriating.
Yeah, it really, really was. And yeah, that's the point that everyone around us was making. Is like, well, Diaz has been doing it all game. Anderson makes one, and actually, I would say that in normal circumstances, I think it's a perfectly fair yellow card for Anderson to receive, because it was one of those where he mistimed it. He was trying to get Murillo out of trouble, actually. It's a bad pass by Murillo. And he mistimed it. He did get the player and not the ball, so he was late. But you can't give that one way and not the other, surely.
Yeah. If they're doing it to us, which they had been, then why aren't they getting any cards for it?
And Sean Dyche's favourite one was when Guardiola committed a foul. The referee blew the whistle. Guardiola booted it like to the other half of the pitch, and then 2 seconds later he went down holding his head. He wasn't injured because he just lay on the ground for it. And the referee knew he wasn't injured because the referee didn't call anyone on. He didn't even barely look at Guardiola. And so what happened is that Guardiola basically, he was committing the dark arts. The referee was looking right at it and just let him get away with it.
Yep. And you just know if it had been the other way around, what would have happened.
Quite. And Sean Dyche also made that point as well. Okay, so rant over for time being. At half-time, it was 0-0.
The 1865 match report.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Baz, the second half got off to an absolute flyer and an absolute stinker by Rob Jones, didn't it? Because the very first action from the kickoff was Igor Jesus running down the left-hand channel, not a defender between him and the goal. He wasn't going towards goal. He was in the channel. Díaz brought him down. Now, bloke next to me was saying, well, VAR needs to be looking at that for a straight red. I have no idea if VAR looked at it. I said, it doesn't matter about the straight red because that was Jesus getting away. Díaz did not play the ball. He was nowhere near the ball.
That's the other thing. I looked up behind us. There's some screens in one of the fancy boxes, and I looked up immediately after just to see if I could catch it on the screen. And the ball was like 5 yards away. Jesus had knocked it forwards, and then Díaz caught him when the ball was nowhere near either of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the logic apparently that was put in by the officials was that it was accidental. So Díaz was running across and caught his leg accidentally, which suggests that you can only get booked for things that are done deliberately, in which case Anderson's booking in the first half wasn't, because he wasn't trying to hurt a player.
No.
He mistimed a tackle.
And the thing is, as I said, the ball, Jesus had knocked the ball on. Díaz, he wasn't running towards goal, but he was in a position to, if he had got to the ball, he would have been near the byline and could have put a cutback in or a cross in for one of our other players to run onto. So it wasn't a direct goal scoring chance, but it was that they were in trouble. So, and they snuffed out the possible attack through tripping him up.
Yeah. I'm just going to add in there that there was another one by Díaz, and forgive me because I can't remember the exact timing of this one. So basically, at the start of the second half, City should have been down to 10. I defy any neutral. A City fan will say, no, it's fine, and that's their want. We know we're biased as Forest fans, but I defy any neutral to say, no, we shouldn't have had a yellow card for that. Maradona in the Midlands in our group chat was being unusually conciliatory, and he was saying it was one of those whereby if it was the first yellow card, you expect the ref to give it, but for a second yellow card, the ref's not going to do that. And I am going to then come to what Sean Dyche had to say, which was, this was such an easy game to ref, and that was such an obvious decision for a ref to make. But he knows that if he pulls out the second yellow at that point, then what's going to happen is that the post-match, whatever happens in the result, the post-match is going to be saying, Rob Jones, you changed the course of that match by giving Díaz a second yellow card. Dyche said, they say it's an accident. If that's an accident when he's running through a goal, we all know what happens. You get a red. So why is it an accident? And therefore it's not a card in other circumstances. And apparently, according to the BBC, former referee Darren Cann said, I didn't think it was a second yellow for Rúben Días. It was just an accidental crossover. He wasn't trying to make a challenge and there was minimal contact. And because he's on a yellow card, it doesn't mean the next foul is automatically a yellow. Which brings me to the point I was going to make, which was there was a wonderful moment, which was right in front of us on the halfway line, in front of the Brian Clough stand, where Jesus was clearly taken out by Díaz, and some of us were standing up shouting, he's got to go now. And the referee got out of that one by just not giving the foul. Because he knew if he gave the foul, he'd have to give a yellow card.
It was absolute... I've not been as... during the game, I was angry. Now I'm just utterly disappointed. It's like the parental thing. It's like, I'm just disappointed because it just makes a mockery of everything.
Well, let's put it this way. At the end of the game, I said, it's hard enough to beat City with 10 men. It's impossible when they've got 12, and you said that's a phrase I've not heard for a while.
There was a point I was thinking, can I start a chant of you've only got 12 men?
Yeah. Okay, and then no sooner had that happened than Man City did take the lead, and in fairness to them, they'd been threatening this kind of thing, and we'd been saying, actually, especially towards the end of the first half, that it's really important. The trouble with playing against a team like City is you cannot afford a single lapse of concentration. Now, I'm going to point out that I'm not attaching any blame to anyone in a red shirt, but that kind of collective split second where you just switch off created the opportunity. And at Christmas, it seems appropriate that City had Reindeer and Cherki playing for them, and Tijani Reijnders managed to get behind the back line. He nutmegged John Victor, and City all of a sudden had a lead. And I don't know, I don't think it's fair to say that Forest were stunned by the non-dismissal of Dias. I mean, the fans might have been. I don't think the players were. I think it was just a case of City doing what they do really, really well, and that just, that little lapse of concentration that can happen just happened.
And to be fair to City, the play to get the goal was absolutely superb. Like lots and lots of very fast, close passing that basically cut through us. But you can't help but think it's just like there's that, what had happened just like 1 minute before, has everyone's mind just slightly moved slightly, so they're not quite on it.
Well, so again, Married on the Midlands in our group chat, he was saying, I didn't think that the refereeing was anything spectacularly different to what you'd expect in any other Premier League game. But the Sky Sports ticker, which you checked, said something different, didn't it?
It said 2 minutes between Man City being extremely lucky to have 11 men on the pitch and them taking the lead.
Yep. Yeah. Fortunately, Forest came back into it just 6 minutes later, and it was an outstanding goal of our own, wasn't it? Because it started when Reijnders lost the ball on the edge of the Forest penalty area. And that says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it was a classic classic Nuno ball goal, really. Because it was Gibbs-White who picked it up off Reijnders, put his shoulder down, started the run forwards, played it out towards the left wing. I think it went to Williams first, then to Callum, and then to Jesus, who by then was in the same position where he got fouled earlier.
Yep.
And but this time he didn't get fouled, put the cross in, and Hutchinson, I don't quite know how he'd managed it, but Hutchinson was unmarked. And
late entry into the box.
Yeah, and it's one of those, at first it looked like it was just going to be a tap in, but then you think actually it's not on the ground. He's hit it in the air. So I've not seen it back, but that's what I thought at the time. And it was a very, very good goal. Just absolutely what we needed as well.
Yeah. Now, I think it is fair to say that a little bit of what we feared did happen to a certain extent, which is that when you have to be constantly switched on in these matches, there's going to be more and more lapses of concentration as we go on. So I think it's fair to point out that Cherki, who was probably definitely Man City's best player, he managed to escape down the right wing, and he put in a shot which was at the near post, but still needed really good reflexes by Big Bad John to push onto the post and behind. Foden had an effort which also required a save by the big Brazilian's legs. And although the game was very much nip and tuck and kind of cat and mouse, but City were showing more intent at kind of carving out those opportunities, weren't they?
Yeah, they were playing what you would the sort of classic Man City type of game where they were keeping the ball and moving us all around the pitch, and then waiting for someone to just move that little bit too slowly, and then exploiting that little space that they'd created. And obviously they're very, very, very good at that. But that's not to say we didn't make our own chances. The game definitely opened up in that sort of middle period of the second half.
Yeah, and yes, I would hope for the neutral it'd be actually a very good match to watch in terms of not necessarily kind of out and out goalmouth action, but again that kind of cat and mouse, that idea of a team who are pretenders to the Premier League crown against a team who are, have been crisis ridden and are just hovering outside the relegation zone. Now, the thing that we know is that Man City did win the match, and it came from Rayan Cherki. And there's plenty of controversy from a Forest perspective from this one. Now, first thing to point out, it was a corner which came in from City's right-hand side, so a left-footed in-swinger. We had been saying for every corner that Man City had that Guardiola was the big danger. He makes those late runs. He's scored against us 2 or 3 times from corners, hasn't he, in the last 2 or 3 years? And he's making those late runs. On this occasion, the ball was quite a deep one. Guardiola had to drop deeper. He nodded it back. Cherki, on the edge of the box, hit a shot first time, bit of a daisy cutter, and just beat Big Bad John at the near post. Now, that's the obvious thing to see at the time. What was striking was that every single Forest player went absolutely bonkers at the ref.
Yeah, they all charged up to him, led by Morgan, because obviously he's the captain, and immediately started asking. Basically, it sounded like I would say they were asking for a VAR check on it.
Yeah.
And then we were looking over, and we could see that Murillo was going up to the referee and pointing at his shirt, and you look at his shirt and it had a massive rip across the sort of right hand chest area, and he actually had to go and change his shirt because it was so ripped it was
rags.
Yeah.
So apparently that was from his tussle with Erling Haaland. And then I was wondering, and mainly because a couple of other people near me also called it out, was John Victor obscured by a City player in the way, and therefore an offside in the way that the Dan and Doy things against Liverpool and against Wolves, and actually it wasn't that, was it? But you could see from the way that Forest, Big Bad John was going crazy, and Morgan was really, I know he's the captain and that he does remonstrate quite visibly with officials, but there was something different about this, and other players were coming up as well. Murillo spent a lot of time there, Milenkovic went over. Most of the players were kind of, and in fairness, there was a big, long VAR check, wasn't there?
Yeah. Not as long as the one the other day, the other week, but which was obvious. And this case, it wasn't obvious, but it was probably 30 seconds to a minute.
Yeah,
and then he pointed to the spot, to the centre circle, and the goal stood. At this point, I still had no idea. I thought it was about Murillo's shirt.
Yeah, because, if you're thinking, well, if that's not shirt pulling, I don't know what is.
And we'll make this point now, is if there's an off-the-ball incident anywhere on the pitch and it's a foul, then the game gets stopped and the foul gets given. So even if Erling Haaland is ripping Murillo's shirt to pieces and they're nowhere near the flight of the ball, it's still a foul. You're not supposed to do that.
And the one that actually, and we just watched a slightly grainy replay of it, which we got off social media. So Gibbs-White was at the far post, and he was with Nico O'Reilly. And O'Reilly did what you'd call, I suppose, a tactical foul. He made sure that he knocked Gibbs-White over, but in a way whereby it wasn't close enough to the action. But as the ball comes back in, that means that Gibbs-White is on the floor at the time that Cherki is lining up his shot, and he's basically like Bambi at the moment that the shot comes through, so he's not in a position to be able to block the shot, which is what he was put there to do, is to be a blocker.
His positioning was on the far post to stop any shots that creep in at the far post.
Yeah, so From Deitch, Morgan Gibbs-White quite clearly gets pushed to the floor and the same player is involved in blocking the ball. But he can't block it because as he jumps up, it goes through the bit of his body which he'd have blocked it with. Whichever way you look at it, it's a foul. And then the BBC go on to say the VAR checked the goal but ultimately allowed Jones's on-field decision to stand. Former official Darren Cann told Match of the Day the video assistant referee naturally checked the goal and concluded that no clear and obvious error was made. I agree. This was a decision that will split views. Some will agree it's a good goal and others will think it's a foul. Therefore, the referee's call of goal should stand. I'm not 1,000,000% convinced by that.
No, I can see why you could say it's not a foul, because O'Reilly and Gibbs-White come together, and you could argue that, like you'd made the point earlier about Omari Hutchinson trying to shove O'Reilly over.
He's a big lad, isn't he?
O'Reilly's a big lad. Hutchinson's tiny. Hutchinson actually put two hands on O'Reilly, tried to shove him, and pretty much bounced off him.
For fans of 80s television, it's like in the A-Team when someone tried to punch Mr. T and nothing happened.
Yeah. So you could argue that Gibbs-White has tried to back into O'Reilly and O'Reilly was just stronger and Gibbs-White fell over. I think it was a shove, but you could say actually that's what happened. So,
I think you're being a bit generous. I think it's pretty clear that O'Reilly is... there's the usual wrestling, let's put it that way. Now, we keep getting told that wrestling in the box is to be cracked down on, and it never is. And the argument, again, is, well, it happened off the ball. But that doesn't stop it from being a foul.
It doesn't stop it from being a foul, and as Sean Dyche says, if it hadn't happened, then Gibbs-White would have stopped the goal. So... again, it's just infuriating. It's absolutely, and like, yeah, if they're cracking down on, they're always cracking down on wrestling in the box when Morato's playing.
Yep.
We've got an attacking corner, but they don't seem to bother doing it when we're defending the corner.
There were 2 or 3 times, I think, in the first half where we're about, literally as our corner taker was about to strike the ball, the ref blows the whistle and goes in and has a word with. As a word with various players.
There wasn't any as far as I could see, there wasn't wrestling for those ones. It was Milenkovic just yelling at Donnarumma, who was yelling back.
Yeah. And anyway, certainly the Darren Cann thing about some will agree it's a good goal and others will think it's a foul, therefore the referee's call of goal should stand. I don't think that's very good logic. Surely the logic is, are any laws broken?
Yes, if it's a foul... and then surely it's VAR's job to decide that it's a foul.
And tell the ref it's a foul.
Yeah.
As opposed to telling the ref that Dan Undoy may or may not be in an offside position when he clearly was, and spend 5 minutes deliberating over that. So, yes, let's just say that despite a few changes, and a few kind of tactical tweaks as the match goes on, Forest were very much chasing the game. They were up against it, and it finished 2-1 to Man City.
The 1865 Match Report.
Game's over. Time to check my fantasy scores.
You using a VPN?
Why?
Because using public Wi-Fi without a VPN is like leaving your wallet open on the table.
Oh. Time to up my defense.
McAfee Secure VPN keeps your personal information private and is included in all McAfee plans starting at just $39.99 for your first year. Sign up at McAfee.com/online protection.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Now, just as a bit of a postscript to that match report, the last few minutes, I mean, I think Deitch was really desperate to get something out of it, and he did something which isn't very Deitchian, which is he put on Taiwo as a second striker. Initially, he was going to bring off Jesus, but he changed his mind, brought off Dominguez, put on Taiwo as a second striker, and then basically moved Milenkovic to play as a kind of a big old heavyweight up there as well. Which is something that even, I know he did it a couple of times at Everton with Tarkowski, but let's be honest, Everton haven't had a huge amount of firepower, have they? Mm-hmm. So I was a little bit surprised to see that. It meant that Anderson, who by this point was playing on one leg...
Yeah, literally he was holding his thigh, which is slightly worrying.
So Anderson dropped a little bit deeper. Morgan was now the holding midfielder, and it was all a bit formationless and a bit kind of, it was a bit of a Hail Mary, wasn't it? And as predicted, it didn't really achieve much because we ran out of time. And it was one of those, the other thing to note is that right just before the final whistle, I think as Jesus went down in the box, I mean, there's no arguments here, definitely wasn't a foul. It was Jesus going, we've got to try and get something out of this match. I've stayed up all of these other times and I've been fouled and nothing's happened, so I'm going to go down in the box. And the referee quite fairly said, get up, and then straight away blew the final whistle. Notable that it wasn't just the Forest players who were absolutely exhausted at the end of that. Man City's players went down like they just kind of had to give their all to try and win the European Cup final.
Yeah, and I saw a bit of one of Guardiola's interviews afterwards, and he says all the extra weight I put on over Christmas is now gone because Sean Dyche has done such a good job with that team.
Let's just point out that Pep is very, very good at buttering up teams he's just beaten, though.
Yes, I know, but I would say we did give them. I definitely think a point would have been a very, very fair result for both sides because, one, I don't think they were better than us. That when they were doing what they do, they were better than us, but we stopped them doing that for most of the game, and then we created chances against them doing what we do, and there were points in the game where they couldn't stop us doing what we do. So yeah, I'd say it was about equal.
Yeah, and I would say that going back to that thing about, okay, we can't play Man City at their own game because you'll get beaten all ends up, and actually you could argue the FA Cup semi-final last year was a good example of that. It was a case of Nuno tried a tactical and formation change, and Man City they had all the answers, and basically by scoring early, Forest were never going to get back in that match. However, I would also say that the attacking moments that we had, if you think that Dyche is just a hoofball merchant, then that's a real it's a real way of kind of taking the wind out of your sails in that respect, because Forest played some nice stuff.
Yeah, and we played some very, very good football. Sometimes it was effective. I think probably even if Chris Wood was back, I don't think we'd be able to play quite the way we are at the moment, because a lot of it is down to the fact that Jesus is all over the pitch.
Yeah, there's a fair point there.
And Taiwo came on towards the end, and I really, really like Taiwo, but he obviously needs a run of 8 or 9 games to get his sharpness back. But one of the things that Taiwo gave when he was on form would give us was he would give the opposition defenders an absolute nightmare, and that would create space for other people. And Jesus is doing that for us.
Yes, that's very true, and that's why I think there's going to be a lot of people who'll watch Match of the Day this evening and they'll go, that Forest Brazilian lad, he's pretty good, isn't he? Just as to finish off with, so at the time of recording, which is Saturday evening, which is the 27th of December for people who, like me, have forgotten what day of the week it is. So Forest are just above the relegation zone in 17th position, 18 points, so 5 clear of West Ham, who are in 18th. We then have Burnley on 12 points, so that's 6 behind Forest. And of course, Wolves still with fewer points than a Dorito. Leeds are above us with a game in hand on 19th, and then it's Bournemouth, who are quietly going into freefall, I've noticed.
Yeah.
And Bournemouth are on 22. So, although the table, and we're at the point of the year where you say the table doesn't lie, and it doesn't, but once again, going back to that well-worn point, if you take out a certain 39 days, Forest are a top half Premier League team.
Yeah, and I'd say actually as well, if we can put in performances like that Man City game, then we're definitely a top half side. Yeah. The problem we've had is the Everton game and the Fulham game where we couldn't match the performances, and that's the next thing for us to sort out.
Especially as the next game is against Everton.
Yes.
So, I say, we'll have a tribute to John Robertson coming up very, very soon. We'll have a report after the Everton game. Merry Christmas to those of you still got a bit of turkey to eat. And we'll be back in your feeds very soon. In the meantime, come on, you Reds.
You've been listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps other listeners find our content.
Doug. Here we have the Lemur Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Lemur? Is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.